Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, all
Good
the
morning.
learners of MHI first semester. My name is Dr. Nakhat Shaheen and I am the program coordinator of MHI. So, today our resource person will take the block 8 of MHI 1, that is Ancient and Medieval Societies. Block 8 is the Medieval World in Transition. So, now I am requesting our resource person to kindly take over the class. So, please start the class. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So today's topic is medieval world in transition. Transition implicates a period that joins two periods, medieval period and modern period. So transition period is very crucial as people move from one phase of civilization to another. And we have in this unity 80 that is certain legacies of earlier. We have not become modern all of a sudden. We owe a lot to our ancestors, even to the primitive people, for giving or passing on certain wisdom, which we improve upon to make our life comfortable, easier, and fine. So, if you say that the medieval period was steeped in ignorance and superstitions and blind beliefs, see, it would not be correct altogether. They had also certain scientific temper, and they had tried their best to give shape to their ideas of science and technology. So, scientific legacy of earlier period. Legacy means whatever they have given to us in a certain respect. That is, we will first go to the Arab scientists, such as Averroes, played a key role in the development of science during the Middle Ages, not only through their own contributions, but also through preservation and transmission of ancient Greek scientific tradition. Just I was telling about how we get knowledge of wisdom from our previous generation. That it is it is the supreme duty of a human being is to pass on knowledge or whatever good things he knows to the next generation. See, Arab scientists, they whatever legacy they left for us, they brought it from Greek tradition, Greek scientific tradition. And during the medieval period of 13th century, various universities came into being, and professors and lab students bodies had been established in Western Europe, and these professionals belong to diverse fields like they are lawyers, doctors, church leaders, etc. So during this period, since medieval period was completely dominated by the church, so church dominated the Western world. According to prevalent notion, in the medieval universities, a motionless earth was fixed at the center of the universe, and 10 separate transparent crystal spheres moved around. This was a wrong notion. Scientists in the medieval notion that is, emotionless earth was fixed at the center. According to their contention, earth is at the center and other objects, spherical objects, are moving down the earth. That means earth is constant and every other things are moving around earth. And the, the moon, the sun, the five known planets and the fixed stars were embedded in the first eight spheres. Two more spheres were added during the Middle Ages. That means the gist of the act is that Earth is constant and is at the center, and all other things, heavenly bodies, planets, sun, moon, etc., are moving around the Earth. So this was the legacy of various universities that came into being during the medieval period. So gradually astronomy developed. As we said, as a man has willingness to make progress and man has the ability to make progress also. This faulty notion did not last long. Copernicus, scientists like Copernicus, Tycho, and Kepler, they, they were learned men who introduced revolutionary changes in the way their contemporary society perceived the world. Whatever the perception of their contemporary scientists, they differ from their notions completely. They provided new insights about the earth and the universe through their works in the area of astronomy. So, according to them, celestial bodies influenced kingdoms and human life. Copernicus clung to the Aristotelian idea of crystalline spheres and the idea that the stars hung on an outer sphere. So, like even today, we also believe that planets and stars, movement of planets and stars, influence the life of human being. And in those period also, this belief was there. Now Copernicus found out that it is the sun, not the earth, who who is at the center of the celestial bodies. So Kepler believed that the orbit of planet must be circular. Kepler had a idea that the orbit uh, on which the planets are moving, they are circular, the perfect harmonious creation of God. But the observed facts indicated that planets orbited the sun in elliptical oval shaped paths rather than circular ones. The work of these three men, that is Copernicus, Tycho, and Kepler, marks the beginning of modern astronomy, and we will discuss their contributions in detail. So now the the thing we came to know that The earlier belief was about Earth remaining at the center and other objects moving around Earth. Now, with the passing of time, with the flux of time, Copernicus, Tycho, and Kepler, they came to believe that it is not the sun, but the it is not the earth, but the sun, who is at the center. However, Copernicus was uh, wrong to declare that the planets are moving in a circular path, whereas the fact is that planets move in an elliptical path, that is the oval shaped path. So, contribution of Nicholas Copernicus, where he studied and what he did, that is not important. What he invented and what found out to, that we will discuss. He did not approve of a geocentric model of Ptolemy. Ptolemy is a geographer, astronomer, and geocentric means Earth being the center. That is called geocentric. So he believed a heliocentric universe. The Earth-centered model of Ptolemy, the last great astronomer who lived in Alexandria in the second century, did not fit with many actual observed facts about the planets and stars. So Copernicus worked on this hypothesis from about 1506 to 1530. He made mathematical calculations to see the results of a heliocentric or sun-centric universe. Heliocentric, when the Earth is at the center, according to a belief, that is called the geocentric universe. And when the sun is at the center, it is called the heliocentric universe or sun-centered universe. He made mathematical calculations to see the results of a heliocentric or sun-centric universe. The result of his work was published as on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres in 1543, and that was the year of his death. In that year, he died. Further, it was revealed that Earth revolves around its own axis. The apparent motion of the sun through an annual cycle is called by the earth revolving is caused by the earth revolving around the sun. The sun revolves around the sun annually, and this is called the revolution. And because of this, the, the other planets they seem to regress. That means they seem to move backward because of the fact that all are moving around the sun and other planets are far away from the earth or from the sun. And that is why it appears that other planets are moving backward. That means apparent backward, but that is not true. All are moving in the same direction. The Earth are traveling in a similar orbit around the Sun. So sometimes it passes these outer planets in their longer orbits, making them look like they were moving backward across the sky. This was a simpler and neat theory compared to complicated and the basic Ptolemaic theory. It is just like when we travel in train. that not exactly, but the trees and other things appear to move backward. Similarly, when all planets are moving in the same direction and the Earth passes on them because of its nearness to the Earth, it appears that other planets who are orbiting at a further distance, they appear to go back. That is the theory. So, Copernicus, by revealing so many things, destroyed the basic idea of Aristotelian model that earthly world was quite different from heavenly one, where were heavens and the throne of God. The Christian clergy, including Protestant Martin Luther and Calvin, declared it false as it did not fit into the Christian dogmas about the universe and its nature. It was not accepted by many theologians because it does not conform to the instructions uh, or it does not go in line with the Christian dogma. That in the Old Testament it has been mentioned that earth is constant and the sun moves around the earth. So because of this, the newfound fact, the heliocentric universe was not accepted by even certain theologians. Tycho Brahe, observing the stars, this astronomer built sophisticated observatory and saw planets with naked eyes. The Copernicus model had a simplicity, regularity, and consistency, and it did make better astronomical predictions. Tycho relied on exact measurements and observations to study stars. So Tycho's assistant Johann Kepler subsequently made brilliant use of the masterly and accurate data. So Tycho collected certain data which helped his assistant Kepler to make use to find out to accurate data. So elliptical orbit of Johannes Kepler, the assistant of Ty- Tycho Brahe, who had collected valuable data through an observatory by seeing or by observing the stars on naked eye. And this Kepler used those data to find out certain facts. And after years of observation, he came to the conclusion that Kepler came to the conclusion that the planets could not be could not move in a circular path, and that they are moving in an elliptical path. So Kepler published uh, his third law of planetary motion in his book Harmonies of the World, and the square of any planet's period of revolution about the sun, he demonstrated, is proportional to the cube. This is a purely scientific thing, and it is perhaps beyond our reach to understand what the scientific laws discovered by Kepler meet. Anyway, so Kepler, no doubt, was a great astronomer, and through his years of assiduous work, he came to the conclusion that the planets are in an elliptical orbit. So, beginnings of the experimental method. It was Galileo, you might have heard the name of Galileo, who confirmed uh, through his observation through telescope that the Earth is moving around the Sun and the planets are moving in an elliptical path. And this whatever he found out, all, all these went against the teachings of church. So Galileo was directed to withdraw his statement, otherwise, or with the threat of his life. So Galileo was threatened, intimidated to withdraw, and Galileo had no option but to withdraw what he pronounced about the planetary movements and the path on which the planets and other heavenly bodies move. Then coming to physics and mechanics, Galileo by using the telescope, he he observed the first four moons of Jupiter, and he also found out a Milky Way. Milky Way means a constellation of stars, and and it was revealed that the surface of the moon was not smooth. So all these findings um, offended the uh, church, and Galileo was tried for heresy by the papal institution and imprisoned. Galileo was imprisoned, and he was released only when he withdrew his statements. Then came Newton, a very reputed scientist, and in his book Principia or Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, he formulated his famous three laws. Newton is famous for propounding three laws of motion as well as law of universal gravitation. The first law of inertia merely summarized what Galileo had already said. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object at rest tends to stay at rest unless external force is applied. An object in motion tends to continue at constant speed in a straight line. And whenever an object is in motion, it continues to move in a straight line. This is the first law of Newton. His second law of motion states that if more force is placed on an object, the more it accelerates. Naturally, this is a very simple mechanism. When we when we give more force to a moving body, it will accelerate or it will it will it will go in a greater speed. Whenever we increase our accelerate, then our bike is running faster. So this is very simple that when a greater force is applied on a moving body, it it moves in a greater speed. This is the second law, and the third law of Newton is very common to everybody. That is, every action has equal and opposite reaction. Nothing, it does not need any explanation. Just you pound a table and you will feel that the intensity of your force of hand will receive a reaction from the table. So every action has equal and opposite reaction. The famous law, third law of Newton, which is even extended to the laws of karma in spiritual life, that as you sow, so shall you reap, or whatever work whatever karma we do, we get accordingly the result. So every action has equal and opposite reaction. So this is the great scientist of von Newton's findings. And coming to life science, that means Copernicus published heliocentric theory. Then Andreas Vesalius, a Belgian anatomist, published his tradition breaking work on the fabric of the human body. In his work, Vesalius laid out in detail the most precious anatomical knowledge of the day. Anatomical knowledge means anatomy means study of limbs. That is, but he experimented with the corpse of animal, not human being. So there were certain mistakes, certain anomalies, and then Galen's anatomy and medicinal theories were based on dissection of sorry, animal corpses, but Vesalius tried to remove Galen's errors in his path-breaking work on human anatomy. So Galen found out his or propounded his anatomy on the basis of dissection of animals, but Vesalius removed certain anomalies when he dissected a human body. So human body and animal, that means beast body, are not identical. So whatever Galen had found out regarding the anatomical conclusions, those things contain certain anomalies, certain mistakes, which Vesalius corrected it. Though in the findings of Vesalius, there were certain other loopholes, certain other defects were there. Then Paracelsus, he found out about the germ theory. Germ theory means he ridiculed Galen's medicinal theory that accounted for diseases in terms of some internal imbalance. In terms of some internal imbalance of imaginary humors. Instead of instead he hinted at external sources and causes of diseases. Some substances observed through air. That means one scientist propounds or gives the opinion that the diseases are caused by imaginary humor, not knowing exactly what humors are, and another one finds out that it is due to the presence of germs in air or water, like this. So this is called the germ theory of Paracelsus. So, however, Paracelsus was also a firm believer in alchemy, whose major objective was to transform base metals into gold. Alchemy is a metal that if another metal is touched with alchemy, it turns into gold. This and Paracelsus believed in this alchemy, and uh, he also deeply immersed in the magic and superstitions of the alchemist's art, but also believed in astrological belief that different parts of human body were governed by planets. Different body of human, different parts of human body are governed by planets. This was also believed by Paracelsus. Even if he found the fact that diseases are caused because of the germs. And another scientist, biologist, that is William Harvey, he discovered the circulation of water and published on his masterpiece book, that is on the movement of heart and blood in animals in 1628. So these are the different developments in science, in physics, chemistry, biology, and astronomy, uh, mathematics, etc. These are the findings of the great scientists and astronomers, and during which took place during the transition period when the civilization was moving to a modern phase. The Dutch microscope maker Zacharias Janssen was probably the first to use combined lessons to, to magnify the size of an object, that is which was used in microscopic study. The tiniest particle we can see, which we are not able to see with our naked eyes. We can see the tiny particles through the use of microscope. And this man, the Dutch microscope maker, Zacharias, he used the lenses to magnify the size of small objects, and also he is credited with preparing microscope. Then Dutch scientist Antony van Leeuwenhoek, who observed a fantastic new micro-universe of protozoa and bacteria. So bacteria and protozoa world was discovered by this Dutch scientist. So these are some of the achievements uh, during the medieval period or during the transition period, which eliminated the belief of old belief and the conviction of people which were steeped in superstitions and blind beliefs. Now they took the world slowly but steadily towards a new age, that is modern age. So development of tools and methods towards a better mastery over nature. That means we during this period man was trying his best, or man was arduously trying to have a mastery over nature. And we see that uh, we use power for different works. For different works, for cultivation, for transporting objects, and for other purposes, we use power. That means when the human power is insufficient, is inadequate, then only we use power, some external power is applied. Nowadays, it is not a problem. But when they started the, their move and they started controlling nature, they faced it very difficult. And they took the troubles and pains and spent years together to find out to certain powers and their utilization in day-to-day life. Drawing of flowers. Drawing of flowers, initially it was the man who used to draw flowers, and then it was it was drawn by the bulls, and now horse was used to for drawing plows. So animal power was used to draw plow, and that is the horse. Horse was a very useful animal, and the use of a horse in warfare cannot be cannot be understated or cannot be underrated because horse is too mobile and very helpful in warfare. And besides, the man during this period came to know the use of water mill. Water was used for different purposes and also windmills. Windmills means wind was used to do certain work for human beings. So these are the sources of power. That is the animal power, then water power, then horse, then wind power, and then coal power. Coal means steam power. You can say coal replaced wood and charcoal. Wood and charcoal uh, was not so effective to produce power, so coal was used in that place. And as a result, several industries used to this heat produced by coal, and it was used to in industries in Western Europe, such as production of metals, bricks, glass, salt, soap, and textiles. So, so use of power was important, and gradually it made the process of making the different articles or commodities or running the industry easier and effectively with the new source of power. And then in navigation also wind power was used, which made the ships move faster. And printing technology. Printing technology, John Gutenberg was the inventor of printing press, and he belongs to Germany. And with the printing press, the printing press revolutionized the contemporary society because with these various books were published on a wide range of subjects. So, paper mills were built in different countries of Europe for producing paper, and because printing mills required paper for production of articles, for production of newspapers, books, and other things. So then some other technologies. So technology now come to be used to in different spheres of life, and we have soap industry during this period, then iron industry. So Different kinds of industries were set up and various alloys like brass was produced by heating copper with charcoal and a heating process to soften the material and wear dry. So up to this, we came to know that the civilization was surging ahead with the invention and discovery of various things which made the work of human being easier and smooth. And now we also at the same time it also dispelled the old thought which embedded in the minds of the medieval people. That is, in other words, we can say it repelled or it wiped out the their conviction, long-standing conviction, their superstitions, blind beliefs about the universe, about certain phenomena, and like this. So that means the people were shedding the medieval notions and were moving ahead with new knowledge, with science and technology, with a which was accepted by reason and rationality, and thus the transition period, during the transition period, many things were invented or discovered that meant human being conscious of or that made human beings able to find out to uh, which was the real cause of a particular phenomenon. And he questioned which did not appeal to his conscience, and it had a certain impact on society. That because of the scientist, there was a new impact on society. There was a professional class of scientists emerged, and uh, the expansion of scientific knowledge was the primary goal of this community. So the scientific groups or the professional scientists which emerged during this period, their 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 primary goal was to expand the scientific knowledge among the people or to disseminate the knowledge of science and technology among the people. And secondly, the scientific revolution inaugurated the modern scientific method. This new method of acquiring knowledge about nature was highly critical and based on experimentation and observation. It refused to base its results on the authority of traditions and sacred places. That means which did not appeal to the conscience and the reason. The people were not ready to accept those things, even if those were sanctioned by tradition and the sacred texts. Even the church said these people were not ready to accept certain things that did not appeal or that did not convince them. So, this was the impact of the development of science and technology and the dissemination of scientific temper among people. Living standard was not affected. All these developments did not affect the economic life and the living standard of access of any to any great extent until the late 18th century. So, in spite of all these changes brought about by the scientific investigation, scientific discovery and invention, The economic life and this social life or the living standard of common people have not yet been affected to a great extent. It created a new world view of enlightenment. That means it enlightened the masses, the common people, which is often associated with the idea of mortality. When the when people are enlightened, that means when people are conscious of the reasons behind the certain phenomenon, then they can be called uh, as modern because they are not steeped in, they are not going to believe in anything which does not conform to the scientific reason or scientific temple. And this is how this unity was over. And coming to the religious establishment, tradition of church as an institution. We know that when Christianity was trying to make its way to different countries, initially Christianity was not accepted by Roman rulers, and they persecuted the apostles like Saint Paul, Saint Peter, etc. However, the sacrifice made by Saint Peter and Saint Paul did not go waste, and the Christianity was recognized as a religion by Constantine in 4th century, and in next emperor was Theodosius, who made Christianity as the state religion. So Christianity got its recognition and became the state religion of Roman Empire. And now so Christianity was becoming popular and spreading its wing to different parts of the world. The power of influence of church kept on going with the help of missionary activity and growth of monasteries as a means of continuous ecclesiastical reform. That means during the Middle Ages, Christianity got a boost because of the missionary activities. Missionary activities means activities linked to spread Christianity to conversion to- or proselytization. That is called missionary activities and growth of monasteries. Monasteries means monastery is a form. It's a form of it's a system where the monks used to stay, and their purpose was to make research about the religion, about the theology, and the primary objective remaining spread of their faith. So, because of the missionary and the growth of monasteries, in the influence of church kept on going. Influence of church means the Christianity as a whole. The headquarter of became very powerful, and it directed its adherents what to do and what not to do. The church imposed its will through a number of sanctions and maintained itself by a multitude of revenue and religious demands. That means church demanded wealth uh, from the people. It was the greatest property owner in Europe and accumulated unlimited wealth. That means a church became so powerful that it regulated the day-to-day life of the people and so disorder within the church social background of the rise of Protestantism. The circumstances that led to the rise of Protestantism is very interesting. The church adopted certain methods, certain practices which were full of corruption and which were unethical in the eyes of the people. So when church indulged in such activities, people became critical of the sanctity of the church. Yes, ଗୋଟେ phone ଆସିଲା କଟିଲି. So when there was a degeneration, malpractices, corruption entered into the Catholic Church, people raised their voice and a movement started. Those came to be or movement started. Those came to be known as Protestant movements. And the main protagonist of a Protestant movement was Martin Luther of Germany, and particularly he was opposed to this sale of indulgence. Sale of indulgence means that if he, whatever sin a person can do, those will be nullified by giving money or by money. So not that was not supported by Martin Luther, and who protested against this. And according to him, this the concern of for salvation was a chief motivation of force for religious reforms. So, in this sense, the 16th century Reformation was partially a continuation of medieval religious search. People permitted, Pope permitted sale of indulgence for money. So this was not acceptable to many people, that if you commit sin and without you being punished, you will spend money and purchase as a document which will absolve you from all sorts of sin. That is not acceptable to Martin Luther. So Martin Luther was a genius. His father wanted to uh, uh, make him a lawyer or to pursue a legal career, but he was not interested. Mm, he uh, acquired a doctorate degree in theology and and served as a professor of scripture at the newly established University of Wittenberg. A well-known study of Luther's psychology by Erikson suggests that Luther underwent a severe crisis in his life, and he was grappling with the problem of salvation and meaning of life. So it was during this phase of identity crisis that study of ancient Saint Paul's letter led Luther to a new understanding of a Christian faith. And he came to believe that salvation comes not through external observances and penances, rather, or rather, comes through a simple faith in Christ. It was his belief that salvation comes through a simple faith in Christ, not through external observances and penances, the so-called good works. So Luther was influenced by William Occam's philosophy of nominalism. The philosophy believed that there is no corresponding reality either in or out of mind, which our general terms and concepts could capture. Occam differentiated between the demonstrable truth, which could be verified by experience and proved by reason, and the revealed the truth which could be only known by faith. So there are different types of truth that, according to Occam, Martin Luther came to the conclusion that the gap between reason and revelation could be bridged by faith alone. So for him, faith became a free gift from God's grace. So in this way, Martin Luther was opposed to the practices which were going in church, and his concept of salvation was different from that of the church, and he believed that only through faith in Christ one can get salvation, not by good works or not by and observe, finances and external observances of finances, this so-called good works. And he he wrote 95 theses of Protestant ideas. Protestant ideas were in the Church of Wittenberg, in the Church Gate of Wittenberg. He wrote 95 theses of Protestant ideas. Jesus had, according to this, Christians who sin alienate themselves from God's grace. In order to gain God's grace, the sinner must confess his or her sins to a priest and do the penance assigned. That means the doctrine of indulgence was indispensable part of this system of earthly penance. Whoever committed sin, according to Christian tenets, the person was required to confess his sin before the priest and perform earthly penance. So it was believed that the priests believed that Jesus and saints had accumulated an inexhaustible treasury of merits, and this could be dispensed by the Pope and the clergy for the lay Christians of insufficient merit and virtue. Initially, an indulgence was a remission of temporal and priest-imposed penalties for sin, and now it was openly declared that sin would be mitigated by purchasing a document which is known as the cell of indulgence. So Luther, in his 95 theses, denied the efficacy of good works such as indulgences, and he challenged the priest's direction that Jesus had accumulated inexhaustible merit and which could be distributed among the lay Christians who for this disobedience, for his revolting attitude, Martin Luther was excommunicated by the church in 1500, reacted it by burning the bull, that is papal edict. That means if he issued excommunication letter, and that letter was born by Martin Luther by defying the Pope's order. Luther denied the cult of Madonna and the saints and rejected monasticism. That means all of most of the practices which were being carried on or which were prevalent in church were, were disapproved by Martin Luther and who protested against the church uh, and thereby incurred the displeasure of the Pope. So it was Martin Luther who first initiated the Protestant movement, and he issued so many pamphlets, three pamphlets. Uh, by the first pamphlets, he articulated all his Protestant ideas. Uh, he appealed to the incipient nationalism of Emperor Charles V and other princes of Germany to resist papal claims. This was the first pamphlet. Second pamphlet, according to second pamphlet, that is a prelude concerning the Babylonian captivity of the church, written in Latin. He addressed the clergy to reform the churches, and the third pamphlet, that is that is of the liberty of a Christian man, emphasized the notion of faith and conscience and maintained that final authority rested in the word of God as revealed in the Bible. So Protestantism in sum represented a reformulation of the Christian tradition of medieval times. So whatever practices which were prevalent in church during the medieval period, Protestantism wanted a reformulation of those practices, and this was not which was not acceptable or which went against the interest of the church, and the social impact of Luther's ideas, it had a far-reaching impact, and the centrality of the scriptures in the liturgy and in the Christian faith, abolition of elaborate ceremony. The main focus was to abolish the numerous ceremonials and sacraments, end of ecclesiastical hierarchy, and the humanists in Northern Europe were also calling for precisely such reforms. So the Protestant movement, which was started by Martin Luther, had different variants and it is spread to other countries also. Like in France, it came to be known as Calvinism, and another growth of Protestantism is in Scottish. It is Presbyterians, and in French Huguenots. So in different countries, the Protestant movement took different forms and also norms with slight changes, and all were against the medieval practices, so which was full of corruption and nepotism, and which did not conform to the original tenets of Christianity. So it spread to countries like England and Switzerland, then Scotland, then France, then England, etc. So everywhere there was a reform in the existing church system, and in response to the Protestant movement, there was a counter Catholic Reformation. Catholic counter Reformation. The revival of Roman Catholicism as a counter reaction to spread of Protestantism has been called counter Reformation. The counter Reformation involved Catholic efforts to convince or force dissidents or heretics to return to the church. That means it was an appeal through through convincing or through persuasion and even the course dissidents to come to return to the church. However, it was not simply a negative reaction of Catholics. It was not a negative, but it contained positive action like it tried to bring people or heretics back into Catholic Catholicism. The feelings of medieval piety strengthened by the new spiritual fervor, Christian humanism, a revived scholasticism, and administrative institutional reforms were some of the positive elements of counter. So it took certain measures. The Catholic counter Reformation took certain measures to revive its glory and to bring the heretics back into the fold of Catholicism. One was Council of Terran, Council of Trent. Pope Paul III established the Inquisition in the Papal States and called a council that met at Trent. So the name is Council of Trent. The council met intermittently between 1545 and 1563, and to this council, Lutherans and Calvinists were also invited to participate with a view to reconciliation. However, their insistence that the scriptures be made the sole basis of deliberations made reconciliation possible. There no conciliation could be achieved, even though to this council the Lutherans and the Calvinists had been invited to participate for a reconciliation. The council strengthened moral discipline among clergy and suppressed pluralism and self-indulgence. It further stressed the need for a better educated clergy preaching and instructing the laity. So, a certain positive result came out, that is, it suppressed the self-indulgence. New religious orders. The establishment of new religious order to raise the moral and educational standard of clergy and laity was a feature of counter reformation. So another step taken by Catholic counter reformation was a new religious order, and in this it was meant to raise the moral and educational standards of clergy. Moral and educational standard of clergy and laity. Laity means common people, and it was the Ursuline order of nuns founded by Angela Merici attained enormous prestige for the education of women. That means it sought to raise the moral and educational standard of clergy and laity in order to restore the faith of the people in Catholic Church. So this is the second measure taken by Catholic Counter-Reformation as the new religious order. Then Inquisition. Inquisition was another powerful instrument of a counter-reformation undertaken by Pope Paul III in 1542, who established the Sacred Congregation of the Holy Office with jurisdiction over the Roman Inquisition. It was a committee of six cardinals empowered to arrest, imprison, and execute any Catholic who was found guilty of heresy. That means if any Catholic was found doing something wrong, then the then the committee was empowered to arrest, imprison, and execute the, the person concerned. It operated according to the Roman law. It published the index of prohibited books, a list of books forbidden to be read by the Christians. A list of books were prescribed by the committee, and no Christian was permitted to read these books. Within papal states, the Inquisition effectively put an end to heresy. How outside the papal territory, it made little difference. Then Protestantism and the capitalist ethics. Saint Jerome, the compiler of Bible in Latin, had declared in 4th century that a rich man is either a thief or the son of a thief. That means if a person is rich, he must have resorted to certain unfair means. And that is why the statement a rich man is either a thief or the son of a thief. This declaration is in no way stood in the way of church to amass wealth. Though the declaration was against accumulating the wealth in unfair means, yet it could not prevent the church to accumulate wealth and to amass wealth. And it is uh, the new Protestant spirit had a capitalistic leanings, and usury was though usury was discouraged, yet the the Catholic Christians in the medieval period they they were allowed amassing of wealth from the from production and credit. The economic role of Calvinism and Protestantism in the rise of capitalist entrepreneurs had been the subject of. That means the Protestantism and Calvinism they were in favor of amassing wealth, and this shows that they had a leaning towards capitalist capitalism. Then meaning modern world. So from medieval transition period to modern world, we have happened from medieval transition period to modern world. So what is a modern world? Modern world is suitable changes takes place to meet the present day challenges. We we come across so many challenges and we have to overcome those challenges and the changes that we have uh, during this period that help us to uh, meet the present day challenges. And changes in modern period changes take place in socio-political fields and also in industrialization and transition from agrarian regimes to the industrial and capitalist change. So there is changes. There are changes in different walks of life, and there was outside the contact because of the geographical discoveries. Geographical discoveries took place, and the various continents were discovered. Vasco da Gama found one all sea route to India. So many things put together led to the prevalence of a society which was completely different from the earlier one. Marshall Hodgson, in his three-volume work, The Venture of Islam, Conscience and History in the World Civilization, places the history of Islamic civilization in the context of world history. That means Islam, which made its appearance in 6th century AD, spread to different countries. That is, the Islamic civilization made its way into China, India, South and Southeast Asia, well into the Balkans and the Mediterranean Sea. So, various civilizations began to move from the relative ignorance of each other into direct and accelerating contact across the oceans. That means when different countries came in contact with each other because of geographical bridges and because of interaction, whether it is a trade or anything else, they came to various aspects of different civilizations of the contemporary period. Many industrialization unleashed the forces of imperialism and nationalism. Many non-European societies were forced to carry out programs of reforms and modernization to defend themselves against imperialist onslaughts and to occupy honorable. So that means industrialization led to imperialism and nationalism. And many countries adopted Western education, Western science and technology, and Western industrialization in order to be able to defend themselves and to get an honorable position, a dignified position in the Committee of Nations. Decline of feudalism. In our last blog, we have discussed the causes for the decline of feudalism. That feudalism outlived its necessity because of the invention of gunpowder. The castles could not provide protection to the serfs, and the power of the monarchs increased. And there was the Black Death, and there was shortage of labor. So labor could not be available to work in the manor or estate. Uh, and urbanization also took place during this period. Trade and commerce increased, and education spread to different parts of the world. And all these factors together led to the decline of feudal feudalism or feudal states. Small states are governed by the lord or a vassal, that those states came to an end or gradually declined. So, social, with the coming of feudal crisis, the social structure underwent profound transformation. And this led to the growth of agriculture and commercialization of agriculture. Commercialization agriculture means the agriculture was produced not for consumption but for market. So commercialization of agriculture came into being, and uh, efforts were taken to increase the production agricultural produce through new methods like rotation of crops, as we know, and the growth of agriculture was possible due to employment of new technologies. New technology means new agricultural implements were used that help for the promotion of agriculture. And when agriculture developed, it supported the trade in Europe because the surplus produce had to be disposed of, and agriculture also increased due to dike building and reclamation of land. Dike building means building of embankments to control the water of a river for irrigation purposes, and the reclamation of land means to bring new land under cultivation. And during this period also printing press helped a lot for it increased the production of literature on new farming practices and agrarian. So, with the coming of the printing press, new literature was produced too, and those literature were regarding the books on new farming practices and agrarian manuals. That means agricultural knowledge could be disseminated, could be distributed among the, uh, could be spread among the people through literature. Yet, in spite of all these factors leading to the decline of feudalism, feudal system continued here and there, and then uh, the then uh, the class structure began to change along with this, thereby laying the foundations of modern age. That means though feudalism continued in some parts, it declined in major parts of Europe and giving way to capitalist farming. The capitalist farming hastened the process of feudal decline. Transformation of political structures is an important development. There were different forms of government, but it was essentially feudal in nature. Though different forms of government were prevalent, like oligarchy, monarchy, confederations, and even empires, yet those were feudal in its nature. And emergence of strong rulers appeared during this period after the decline of feudalism. Modern nation states with the definite boundaries also evolved. It introduced to modern administration, bureaucracy, and judiciary. So, state played a progressive role in facilitating the rise of capitalism. These states played the role of large-scale tax collectors and redistributors of private income. So, nation state means the nation states come into being when there is a specific boundary of the country, and there there was a we feeling among the population or among the citizens of that, then only we can say that there is or there was a setup, a nation state. Otherwise, it cannot be a nation state. It may be a country with a specific geographical boundaries with the population, but not a nation. Unless a feeling of we or we feeling that we belong to this country. So unless belongingness to one's country, this feeling does not come till that till that period. We cannot say that the country or the people constitute a nation. So uh, then trade and commerce increased by and states accumulated capital. The English Civil War destroyed the feudal structure of the state, brought the uh, destroyed feudal structure of the state and brought the new landed class and the bourgeoisie to share power. The so-called Glorious Revolution of 1688 ended a prolonged class war and established a constitutional arrangement that still continues with a slight modifications. The Glorious Revolution in England of 1688 ended to a class struggle and established a constitution which with slight modifications continues to this day. And then came hand in hand the French Revolution of 1789, and it gave the message of liberty, equality, and fraternity to the world. The relationship between the government and the governed had undergone a major change. That is, the subject of monarchs became the citizens of the nations. Now the relationship changed. Relationship between the governed and the monarch changed. Now it became the um, citizen and the nation state. So, so in this way, modern nation states emerged, and with the modern political ideas like liberty, equality, fraternity, and the relationship between government and the ruler also changed. And in every state, national church came into being. That is, national church churches were established in every state. The chief feature of Middle Ages and gave birth to many new ideas like political rights and individual freedom. Medieval Christendom was rejected in favor of a secular authority. So, religious, everything was controlled by a religion that was rejected in favor of a secular authority. And in Italy, the concentration of power in the hands of the rulers came to be called a Stato, a model emulated by many European powers. The most important contribution of the Italian states to the modern concept of international relations is the balance of power. Balance of power is a very interesting phrase. That is, each state, according to this, each state tried to preserve its own territory and defend its own interest by ensuring that no single state became strong enough to enslave the other. And for this, a balance was maintained by a group of states to counter the design of some others. That means during the Cold War, the alignment of nations can be interpreted in the same spirit. If China grows very strong, then other nations of the world, including America, become suspicious of Chinese design, and they try to keep Chinese growth at bay so that balance would be maintained in the southeast. Similarly, now we can take the example of Russia and Ukraine war, that how balance is to be maintained the concern of USA and other NATO states. So when a one country grows in power and becomes dangerous to other neighboring states of a region, then the powers of the world they think of and unite to keep at bay the growing power of that particular state so that the state would not be in a position to assert its supreme position in that region. This is how balance of power is maintained, and it was Italy which gave the concept of the balance of power, uh, maintenance of balance of power. East and South Asian political transformation. China maintained isolation initially. However, due to age of discovery, the Portuguese made inroads into China, followed by Spanish and other. Russia also made its entry into Manchurian borders, and like this, in this way, various powers entered into China, which had so far maintained isolation. And historians hold two divergent views on whether the 16th century or the 19th century should be regarded as beginning of modern China. One school of historians regard the Opium War as the point of departure. Opium War of 1839 to 42. Uh, the second school of historians, consisting primarily of Chinese schools, considered the arrival of European explorers and missionaries during the transition from Ming. So, however, modern China, regarding the emergence of modern China, there are different views, two divergent views, and China developed in various phases. One phase that is the due to for survival till 1911, that is one phase, that is Lifan Yan 1638. Now the another one was Grand Council of 1729. Another was in 1861. So these attempts were followed by a series of reform movements that led to the formation of modern China. Changes in Arab states. The Abbasid dynasty lasted up to 1258. Then it is disintegrated into distinct political and regional entities. So the then Caliphate broke down into three major areas. One was the old lands of Iraq and Iran. Second was the Egypt and controlled Syria, that controlled Syria, and the third area was of North Africa and Mediterranean Sea. And the Muslims were also divided in two sects, that is Sunni and Shia. Sunni and Shia means the Orthodox Muslims were called Sunni, and those who are liberal, a little bit liberal, and are different from the Sunnis are known as Shia. And the Ottoman Turks, the rise of Ottoman Turks brought about to changes a struggle between Sunni and the Zayids forced Ottomans to withdraw. Henceforth, the political developments can be closely tied up with the trading activities of this region. So, when the Ottoman Turks rose, that is, they occupied Turkey and the adjacent areas, they uh, disturbed the trade and commerce, and for which other courses of action were taken by different countries because of the rise of Ottoman Turks. Emergence of Europe are the center of world trade. So this cannot be completed right now, and because it will take another 1 hour, I think. So um, because of some unavoidable uh, circumstances, I am constrained to wind up the class here because this was totally new uh, concepts due to the topics inclusion of topics like science, technology, and the state commission and other things. So I take the opportunity not to go ahead. So if possible, we can complete it or have a bird's eye view of rest of chapters. And let us wind up the class as it is approaching 12. And I have certain work, and we will be meeting in our next class. Till then, take care. So thank you all for being with me for such a long mm, time. Thank you once again, you all, my dear students. Thank you.